Good morning, everyone. This is LadyDragon speaking. If you didn't have a chance to watch the Delta presentation, a must for everyone of extreme importance. C'est pour la chance de regarder la présentation de Delta, là. C'est un must pour tout le monde, sur la planète au complet. Or Saturday, January 11 is 10:24 a.m. Now we're going to do Amazon, a presentation. They have how can brands keep up with change without losing their charm, discover strategies for remaining timeless and adaptable. On va regarder ça.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to CES. I'm Nagina Lazari, and I will be your MC for today's Storyteller Sessions. We have an incredible day of programming ahead of us, featuring conversations with executives from Amazon, SiriusXM, Meta, DoorDash, and more. Our first session starts now. We will hear from Amazon on how to have a timeless brand strategy. Please welcome Carly Zip, Global Director of Brand Marketing at Amazon Ads.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, this is the first session, so I promise to make this very exciting. Welcome to day one of CES. You all made it out of your beds, you're here, and I am so excited to be joined here today by two amazing entrepreneurs, content storytellers, and just great human beings. First up, Aldous Hodge. He is the producer and star of our show on Prime Video, Cross. And Lauren Anderson, the head of content and brand innovation from Amazon MGM Studios, who produces Cross. Welcome, guys.
Yes.
Thank you. So, to get our juices flowing, we're talking about timelessness and storytelling. So I want to know from each one of you, what is a favorite show, movie, or novel that you feel like has stood the test of time? Aldous.
I think, let me see, I'll take a novel first, and I would say probably The Alchemist. I probably read that book 3-4 times, I don't know. And I know it resonated with me as a teenager. It probably would resonate differently and more impactfully now as an adult. Adulting is hard. But good morning, by the way, everybody. How y'all doing? No, I said good morning.
Good morning. There we go.
But I would say The Alchemist. So many different lessons that made sense at different stages of life that I think it's a truly evolutionary piece of literature. Yourself?
From a novel standpoint, if we're going to go novel first, then I'd say To Kill a Mockingbird. And part of why I think about it as well is this idea of taking a piece and putting it in a lot of different mediums. So a book, a play, a movie, like that's in some ways, that's one of the ways that that it's resonant and lasting. But the most recent movie I watched was on the plane, Goodfellas.
Ooh.
So when I think about, it just never gets old. It doesn't feel dated. It holds up today as much as it did when it was made. It's already a period piece because it's based on something that's, so that's what I'd say. Those are my two answers. What about you, Carly Zip?
I grew up a theater nerd.
Okay.
True. So I loved Wicked as a child. I know we're on the Wicked train, but yeah, there you go. You want to defy some gravity? There we go. But I loved the film adaptation. I took my kids. I cried most of the movie.
Yep.
But we're not here to talk about my crying. We are here to talk about you guys. So bringing it back,
Yes.
Most people don't know that Amazon kind of has this roots in storytelling. We started out as an online book retailer. So now, of course, it's expanded to retail, entertainment, devices streaming, the whole gamut. But we really have a very unique opportunity to think about adaptations and really special IP. So that's what I want to get into today. And Lauren, would love from your perspective, you are at the heart of this at Amazon MGM Studios. How do you think about this?
It's a big question, and I will say, first and foremost, and I say this whenever I feel like I do any of these events, that I appreciate being able to speak on behalf of studios, but I'm speaking on behalf of the work that exists across, our TV team and our film team, and of course, headed by our head of the studio, Jen Salke. So I think for us, it's the collective conversation around how we think about IP on the TV side, on the film side, scripted, unscripted. It's a number of things. It's the timeless piece that you're talking about. I mean, when we're thinking about what it is we want to program, we're programming for Prime Video. Prime Video is a large global service, and we want to do things that we feel like can resonate with customers around the world, but also things that we feel like can last, that can hold up, that make sense going from a book to a movie, from a video game like Fallout to a series, that sort of thing. So we talk about that a lot. We want to tell stories that really matter to people. We want to tell stories that make you feel something. I think that can happen in a variety of different ways. Like, we want people to have an emotion, right? Like, you watch television, in particular, when you think about watching on a streaming service, you're inviting characters and stories and incredible writing and actors into your home. And so there has to be something personal there. There has to be a feeling that's conjured up when you're watching. So all of those things go into our decision making. We also think a lot about being, as much as we want to be really global, we also believe you have to be hyper local to be relevant, right? So yes, you have stories that we think can translate to customers everywhere, but you also want to obsess over what actually matters to a community of fans in France individually, or in Brazil individually, or in the US individually. And so we program with that balance in mind as well.
I think what you said, like people want to feel seen and heard and understood. And so I think that's so important when you think about character development.
Yeah.
So, Aldous, for you, you've taken on very iconic characters, major roles. You took on Alec Hardison in Leverage, and then our adaptation, Leverage Redemption.
Yes.
You took on, this iconic NFL running back and civil rights leader, Jim Brown, One Night in Miami.
Yes, indeed.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now on to Alex Cross. So he's this character that was developed by New York Times bestselling author James Patterson. He already had this massive fan base because he was played by Morgan Freeman and Tyler Perry. And now you get him. So congratulations. So, when you think about that, how do you think about putting your own spin on it, but also staying true to the character?
So our showrunner and show creator, Ben Watkins, who adapted this version, when we first sat down and talked about the show and how we wanted to run things and how we saw the show, we didn't really talk about specificity of character as much as we talked about specificity of culture. And to your point, Lauren, it does come down to the minutia of the detail of who's being represented and how, because as you said, people desperately want to be seen and acknowledged and recognized in their truth. And that's something that Ben really keyed in on. We're set in DC with this show. We understand the fan base and what they're looking forward to with years, over 30 books, of an old, this goes back to the early 90s of dealing with and having a relationship with this character. So how do we step into that organically, but also honestly, And I think the thing that resonated with me the most as far as we had a wonderful debut, we had a wonderful outcry, we still have massive support from people that is pouring in, and the thing that's most consistent is everybody saying, oh, you know what, you got DC right. Y'all went out there, y'all said, hey, what's up, Slim? And like, oh, we got the, and y'all got the characters right, and this looks like this, da-da-da. So paying attention to those details really matters, and I think the strength of it comes from being honest and truthful to the audience that you're speaking with. I think every time you put out a piece of work, that you are having a conversation with the audience.
Yeah.
And you have to understand what conversation you're trying to have. In order to do that, you have to understand who you're speaking to. I think oftentimes missteps happen when people are not really certain of who's going to benefit the most. Who's on the receiving end of the benefits and or the consequences of getting this narrative wrong. So when you have someone like Ben Watkins, who's truly empathetic and caring about the people on the other side of his pen, the other side of his script page, the other side of, you know, his TV show, then you're going to get something that is massively impactful in a way that is unquantifiable in quality because of the fact that people see seen, and you cannot put a price on acknowledgement, familiarity, recognition, and thusly internal value.
Well, clearly it's working because
Working a little bit.
speaking of recognitions, this morning the show received 7 NAACP award nominations. Congratulations, including one for you for
Yes.
Outstanding Actor in a Drama Series. A double clap. I'll stop you right there.
Thank you.
So, you know, I think it's because when people think of Alex Cross as a character, he was almost like larger than life, like a
Right.
superhero. But in this adaptation, we really get to see another side of him beyond the detective work, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing him navigating friendship and fatherhood, relationships, grief, and it
Yeah.
makes him relatable and authentic.
Yeah, we made him human.
You made him human.
Yeah,
So
there's-
how did you navigate that?
Well, that was a part of the ambition was, well, Ben had a theory. He said there's the hero and the superhero complex, where you have the superhero who is almost impervious to anything and unreasonable, and then you look at that person and you aspire to be them because you aspire to be something that you yourself cannot be. There's the hero who you can touch and reach because while they're doing these, you know, grand things and they're greatly skilled, it comes at a cost. They are dealing with struggles, strife, grief. They are trying to find their way in the world and oftentimes are stagnant because of the fact that the world sees them one way, their truth tells them something else, and they're just dealing with human struggle. And you don't know if that person is going to get through their ordeal. Superhero versus the hero, and the hero is the person that is going to come home and sometimes going to be strong enough to hold in the tears, but also sometimes going to be even stronger to allow themselves to cry. And that's what we wanted to do with Cross, is make somebody that was approachable and relatable so that people could touch him and reach him and understand that whilst he's doing all these things, he's still a family man, he still has fears, he still has doubts, he's dealing with the grief of a lost wife. So he is flawed in so many ways that resonate with what we're dealing with in different variations at home, that regardless of what he's doing, we know that we can see ourselves in him a little bit, and then as he gets through it, it gives us a little bit of hope to know that we can get through what we're dealing with. Even though he's catching bad guys and we may just be at work dealing with some employees we ain't got the time to deal with today, okay? Look here, Susan, you know, I ain't got time for you today stealing my coffee. But regardless, it gives us a sense of connection, relation, and hope. And I think oftentimes when people watch TV, it's about escapism, but they want to still come at it with something. And if you can come out with just a 1% of hope that helps you get through that next day, then we as artists have done our job.
I love that. I think, like, you know, the beauty is almost in the flaws, and that
Yeah.
helps you build that hope.
I think it does help you look at your own flaws as the perfections.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of a flaw and a perfection, or the idea of perfect and flaw, to me, generally, especially when you're talking about shaping a character or shaping a narrative, perfection is not achieved without flaws.
Yeah.
Sometimes people feel like the idea or the definition of perfection is the remission or the removal or the absence of a flaw. But that's not how success is achieved in any capacity. You have to go through hardships, you have to fall and fail in order to build up, learn who you are, and learn your potential, and fight for what you get. And that's the nature of life. We all go through that in our own ways. That's why it's so. That's why it resonates so familiarly. But with flaws, you cannot achieve perfection without flaws. And when you're talking about something like this kind of show and the way that it appealed to people, again, the perfections were in the flaws.
I think it takes a really strong showrunner and team to really bring that out. And I think it's important to note that this is the first time cinematically that a black man, you mentioned, Ben Watkins, was, you know, the showrunner at the helm of the show.
Yes, and that matters massively.
Yeah.
Why? It's because there is unfathomable quality in culture. Culture has to be addressed and introduced in truth by somebody who understands it and lives it. And with Ben, he did say, look, this first time we're gonna have a black Alex Cross. They were like, what you talking about? He always been black, you know what I'm saying? You ain't seen Morgan Freeman, you ain't seen the. He said, no, we had them and we had them in a specific space where we see the case, we see the crime, but we don't see them go home and see what that experience is. We don't see what that lived black experience is. And currently, right now, you know, and what we have been going through for several years, the juxtaposition of Cross being a loving, doting man, a loving, doting black father, a grieving man, at the same time he's a detective, but he's a black detective, and what does that feel like in the space of truth and honesty? We have an opportunity to address something that is impacting our lives every day in a way that can be helpful, because we can lay out a conversation, lay out different sides of solutions or opinions, and allow the audience to understand, not to dictate to the audience to say what this choice should be and what's right and what's wrong. We give you the layout of what his experience and what his life is, and the fact that he is black means that it's going to be definitively specific and different.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore that. This is what I love about Amazon, and with our other partners, you know, with Skydance and with, at the time, Paramount TV, but with Amazon, Ben said this is what the show is going to be. And oftentimes as a creative, you get handcuffs. You know, you're like, well, we don't know about this, and we're trying to hit this audience, and so we got to take this away. We can't be. Amazon said, go. And therein lies the beauty of the success that we were able to achieve. It comes with partnership, and it comes with people who are willing to see the value in that. And Amazon as a partner said, no, we understand the value in that, because we understand who we're talking to. We understand who our audience is. So go and run with that. And they gave him full trust.
Well, I think that's so important. So Lauren, when we think about our audiences, you know, how do you think about that kind of authentic representation in front of and behind the camera? How does it have an impact on the storytelling?
Yeah, well, you know, I think that Aldous he made a point that I think directly connects to that question, which is this idea that, and I feel like people have heard people say a version of this, hopefully, but this idea that there's universality in specificity. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when whatever story it is we're wanting to tell, so whether it's a crime drama like Cross, where you have this person, this really complicated, grieving man at the center of it, or it's a show like Fallout, or we're always thinking about what are the places where the audience is going to reach in and recognize some aspect of themselves, of their experience, of their fears, of their wants, of their desires, of their longings, whatever those things are. And then how do we best tell that story? It obviously starts with the creator, the showrunner, the director. It has to. We are in a medium that's driven by incredible writing or incredible visual storytelling, and then brought to screen by incredible actors, right? Like, that's what we do. And so we have to meld those things together and ensure that you have the right person telling the story, and that story can be translated through the right person in front of the camera. And that the person in front of the camera is also contributing to what that storytelling is. So I think we go through all of that is a big part of the conversation that we're having, and that we think about across all of our teams every day when we're looking at pitches. Like, I say to people a lot, the exact same idea pitched by 5 different people, and they can say the exact same words.
Yeah.
One person you look at and you say, oh, you can do this. We know that you can do this because of lived experience, because of work that they've done in the past, whatever that is. And so sometimes it's about the idea, but it's so often more about the people who are bringing that idea to life, and behind the camera and in front of the camera. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that. And then I also think, you know, I really appreciate Aldous' point around, and just, you know, maybe wanting to reiterate it, but this idea of who are you talking to and what are you trying to say? Because I think that's the other thing that's a really big deal. And we talk about this, you know, Prime Video has had ads in it for a year, but I came from NBC. I've worked on the ad-supported side for my entire entertainment television entertainment career. And we think about this when we're programming, when we're working with brands, when we're thinking about how we, like all of this together, who are we trying to speak to? And so when we're talking about what partnerships make sense to us, are we speaking to the same audience? Are we trying to reach the same audience? What are we trying to say with what it is we're doing? And are we clear on that, right? Because I think that you can have an audience that you want to reach, but you're not clear on how you want to reach them or what it is you're trying to say. And then that's when you actually don't have a resonant piece of material. You have to be super clear on who you're trying to reach and then what you actually want them to take away from what it is you're saying or doing or, you know, writing, et cetera.
I just want to say real quick, because we're not going to speed past this. You say universality and specificity. So what you're going to do is you're going to copyright that. And you're going to give me my 10, 15%,
Okay.
20%. That's all I'm asking, 25. Because that was a bar. We're not
Is it
going
30
speed
now?
past 35. Thank you. You're so generous.
I
Thank
know.
you
There
so
you
much.
go.
30,
Deals are
my
happening.
gosh. Wow.
But it's true. I mean, look, we talk about that a lot, and I'm sure, you know, I think sometimes there is this sense or belief that, you know, big, broad, the most global hits, the biggest, broadest, most, I mean, you mentioned Wicked at the top. I mean, I can obviously talk about a lot of Prime Video shows. I can talk about things that we've all worked on. The biggest hits are those things where there's something so personal inside of it, so resonant, so deeply emotional. When you try to go just broad, you tend to be quite generic. And that's the thing I think we're all trying to avoid.
You know, I worked on Wicked a little bit myself now. I did, you know, well, technically. So I have, I also have a conceptual design studio. It's called 9B Collective with my two partners, Michael Wandy and Phil Boutte Jr. And we worked with the Wicked team for character concepts. So that means what we do conceptual drawings and ideas for the characters and how they look and all that, you know, working on the shoes, the hat. It's all in the specificity. And that's sort of we're all kind of like, you know, crazy maniacs over there who are like, no, it needs to be 2 inches wider, you know. But we have to study, and it doesn't come from the point of study doesn't necessarily come from, oh, what result do we want? We want to hit this number. Like, you take the mechanics of numbers and you take the mechanics of performance out of the way because that actually stops you from achieving set goals. What it comes down to is understanding the value of what it is you're doing and why people pay attention to certain things, because that's what builds up. You know, rich is quick, wealth is built in pennies. Boom, 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 stack it. And the same thing comes from the quantitative value of a product and how you're doing it and what you're doing. So from the conceptual space, it's very much the same as when you're building up a character. What are the facets of this jewel that are going to shine most brightly? And you can only get that if sort of you take a step back and look at who's affected, but more or less how they are affected. You know, it's the same thing with any particular, with CS, consumer product. How's somebody going to use this and work this into their daily life? We do that, but not from a practical standpoint. We do it from an emotional standpoint. So I think it takes a bunch of brilliant minds who have a great deal of emotional maturity to know where the value lies in something, where they understand where it's going to shine.
And you build trust with the audience that way.
Absolutely.
That's the thing that I think about it in my own personal life, like with products I use, with shows that I watch, with the quote unquote networks I feel attached to.
Yeah.
When they get me on a detail level, then that then makes me say, oh, I want to be here.
Yeah.
Right? Like that they've seen this thing that might seem small, but it's the detail that makes you have then an affinity and that makes you attach and makes you say, oh, I want to be here for a long time. That loyalty is built out of that.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, I know we conversating. I'm saying, you know, you brought up something that made me think of a situation. So Ben was writing a scene. There's an opening scene, and an opening interrogation scene with the very first episode of Cross that a lot of people really love and have fun with because it's a great scene. It's honestly the scene that made me say, I want to do this show, right?
I like that.
You know, if you ain't synced it,
Run,
go
don't walk.
on and synced it. You know what I'm saying? But what happens is Cross is interrogating a man and he calls him Slim. Now, Ben is from Oakland. And originally when he wrote the line, you know, he said partner. It was something like, it's how we do, partner, and Umar White is one of our producers, and he's actually from DC. And he looked at it, he did a pass, because he does a DC pass over every script. But he was like, nah, we don't say partner out there, we say slim. And it seems like such a small, it's one word. That one word generated, I would say, millions of viewership value.
Yeah.
Because when people saw this, so many people who commented and said, the moment I heard Slim, I was in. It'd be so different if Cross is up there, what's up, son? Got you, dog.
Are we in New York?
You ain't from New York. He's from D.C.
Yeah.
But it's those things. And again, oftentimes, we're speaking about this so poignantly because of the fact that oftentimes those are the details that are missed, or when they're brought up, because they're really addressed a lot, you have people in higher decision-making or executive positions who don't understand the value of that, or it doesn't resonate with them, so they'll make you toss it out. You're like, no, this is what people are doing, this is what they're saying. They're like, it doesn't make sense to me. It's not about you. It's never about you. What you feel, what you think, what you want, doesn't matter. What you want for your audience is all that matters with whatever you're doing or whatever you're trying to make for them. What you want for them has to supersede what you want for yourself.
Well, speaking of DC, I am a DC native, so thank you. Thank you for highlighting my town.
Got somebody else in here from DC? No, speak on it.
Thank you.
I see what's
We'll
happening.
talk after. So I thought it was really cool how you guys almost made DC its own character in the show. Whether it was little nuances like that, Ben's Chili Bowl.
Yeah, Ben's Chili Bowl, yeah.
Go-go music and the soundtrack, it felt so authentic. And being so engrossed in the world of Prime Video, I know how much we take into account those locations and what those mean to those audiences, which you both have been saying.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, from you, how important was not just the DC nuance, but the continuity with the series to keep it? You could have moved it to a different city.
We could have, yeah. I'm a continuity hound, and Ben is as well. And look, I speak on him so much just because Ben, he's our leader. He's the captain, we are the co-captains. And, when we talk about these things, we understand where the vision is, we execute, we all miserably come to the same point. And when it came to authenticity, that was paramount. And for me, before I got this job, I had been maybe searching for about a year. I left my last job and, got a few offers, and I was saying no for a long time. I was saying no for 6-7 months. It's been a minute because I felt like the authenticity wasn't present in a lot of these projects. So when I read this, it really, resonated with me, and I'm not even from DC. But when it comes to locations and it comes to DC itself as a city in the show, it is definitely a character, because what we noticed and been identified was that oftentimes when we see DC, we see a visage of it. We see only the political idea, not even the political truth, but the political idea of the Capitol buildings. We see, politicians walking in the halls, see maybe some super spies running around, and that's all cool, but it only shows one sector of what we think DC is. We don't get engrossed in what DC actually is, which is the DC culture. And more specifically, when you're talking about the differences in the ethnic cultures that are there and how they congregate, we're talking about the music culture with go-go being so specific, because that is very much DC. It came out of DC, and when people hear that go-go sound, they're like, oh, we hear ourselves. When it comes to Ben's Chili, it's a staple in DC. Everybody knows Ben's Chili. And I think we only went there because Ben's name is Ben. Personally, man, he's like, Ben's Chili, we gonna go there. But no, it was such a cultural staple in the city that when we went there, it asked if we were scouting, asked if we could use the location, and it's still operated and owned by the first founding member of the family. The whole family still runs it, but still. We went there, and we were talking to Ms. Vita, who is part of the family that runs the business, and she said, nah, look, we like what you're doing, we believe in what you're doing, not only can you shoot here, but we asked them if we could duplicate that at our sound stages in Toronto, and they let us duplicate it inch by inch. It's the exact, replica. And they said the only other time they let someone film in Ben's Chili was, or the last person who filmed there was President Obama. I said, all right, so I guess we must be doing something. But they understood that we were coming at them with respect when it came to the representation. We weren't trying to commercialize it in our own way. We were trying to bring out the authenticity of who they were and bring that to the screen, put them on a map. So because they understood the respect was mutual and reciprocal, they worked with us, and we gained a new, really advantageous partner because of authenticity.
Yeah. So when thinking about that, I want to tease this out for a minute. Lauren, when you guys thought about bringing Alex Cross back to the screen, what made you think that now was the right time, this was the right adaptation? When you take beloved intellectual property, there's a lot of liberties you can play, especially then as you think about brand partners who are going to be aligned to that.
Yeah.
So what goes into that decision making, and how did you guys feel like this was the right time? Who were the partners you thought about? How'd you bring it to life?
So, I'd say a few things. First and foremost, and you mentioned this at the top of the conversation, Carly. So Amazon started as a bookseller, and we have taken a lot of pride in our adaptations, and our IP adaptations. And so Cross follows a legacy of, if you think about Bosch, which is a series that we've had on for a while on the crime side, but the idea of you, Fallout, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I could go on and on and on. We're really proud of the work we've done with IP adaptations. And I think part of that is both understanding that there's a great core audience that's inside of IP, and then being able to build that out in a new, relevant way. But I think the other part of it is that it gets people like Aldous really excited, right? And it gets incredible showrunners excited to adapt and to bring things that they've loved onto the screen. So we do a ton of original content as well, and we have so many titles on our site. But I think from an IP adaptation standpoint, those, we think about that because we appreciate the talent that that comes, and we appreciate the audience that's already excited and already leaning in. From a timing standpoint, and I think the extent to which people know this, these things take years to develop. So it wasn't as if we said, Cross released at the end of last year, and it wasn't as if we said at the top of 24, this feels like a great time for Cross, and then we released it at the end of 24. We said it was a great time for Cross in probably 2020 or 2021 before we actually had Cross come to screens. And so that gets back to, and this is, I love when a conversation organically connects because it does get back to this idea of something being timeless. When we're making decisions around the IP to adapt, so much of it is this idea that if you're too focused on what's happening in an individual moment in time in the culture, by the time when you're doing these sorts of big titles, by the time they come out, that moment may have passed. And so what you're trying to do is choose things that you feel like will continue to represent the culture, be relevant to audiences, if it's 2 years later, 5 years later from the time you we originally developed it. So all of those things are part of the conversation. And then I do think it's a bit about going back to some of the core tenets of selecting things. My personal mantra with things that I develop directly, but I know all of us at studios, we think along these lines in some ways, but we want to make sure if we're doing something that there's something in there for people to laugh at, there's something in there for people to learn, and then there's some way that they can live through a character or the world. Usually you have a winning formula, right? Because I think a drama that's all drama and no comedy, it may be great, but you're probably not going to watch it many times, right? And if it's all comedy without really great storytelling and or really great character development, it will be fun, but again, you're probably not going to watch it many, many times. And if you've got the two, but you're not able to escape or live through the world or the characters in some way, you probably have a better chance of people being excited about it. But the truth is that when you're talking about TV or films that are streamed versus films in a theater, you again want people to be able to escape. That's what people are wanting to do. So, and people want to do that no matter what, right? They want to do that in the theater, they want to do that no matter what, but when you're inside of your home, you sort of want to be transported a bit. And so I think for us, when we're thinking about universality and timelessness, it's sort of, do these stories have all three of those elements that will carry us through no matter when we release it? And thankfully, Cross did that. And we picked up Cross for 2 seasons, so I don't know if everyone even knows that. Like, we picked up Cross for 2 seasons before the first season even released. That's how confident we were.
I like that.
Well, man, I think your bet kind of won out. You know, I think you did
Very
a
much
little
so.
something. So I thank you. You know
Very
what I'm
much so.
saying? I mean, you want to pick up, you know, another 8 seasons, go ahead, you know, holler at your boy. You know, I'm not gonna hold you. If you want to do
So
it.
you want to lock into 8 seasons?
If you want to do it,
okay.
you saying, you know, 'cause you stand in front of people.
You got some brand people here.
You know what I'm
got
saying?
some partners potential. There we go.
Yeah.
So, you know, Lauren, you mentioned the landscape, whether seeing it in films or streaming. You both have been doing this for a while. So how have you guys both seen this landscape change? I mean, now we are releasing big pictures on the devices before they're in the silver screen. I'm curious, you know, to hear from you as a content creator, what that feels like, and you know, from a studio's perspective, how you guys think about it. Let's start with you.
You know, this is something you try not to play catch up with. You try to stay a step ahead, but because the landscape changes so rapidly on a continuous basis, you're like, damn, how do we stay ahead of marketing, and how do we stay ahead of, you know, putting out quality work that is going to be seen and not lost in the shuffle, because there's so many things out there that are overwhelming people to the point where they may, you know, just step away from it for a minute. Oh, I've seen that, you know, and you're like, how do we lock in? Things have changed, especially like in the TV space. As an actor, we noticed a huge shift when reality TV came big. Then reality stars were, the focus was there. So that as actors, you're trying to keep up your job and compete with somebody who, reality TV is a very different avenue, but now they're being used to push into, you know, scripted. So when you're having people who are working on these things, you're like, wait a minute, they're actually 2 very different demographics, but now we have to compete. Then you deal with streaming and how that changes accessibility, because now the audience is getting things faster and they're feeling an entitlement to do so, right? I don't want to wait, you know, from the movie to the streaming. I don't want to wait 6, 8, 9 months before I can have it at home. I want to wait a month. Now I want to wait even shorter. I don't want to wait to see a show every single week. I want to binge it all now, right? So these are consumer habits that are shaping the market that we work within, so we have to adapt and then again figure out how to get ahead in order to maintain our relationship with the audience. So you have to first understand why these massive behavioral changes are happening. Is it because people feel like they have less time? Is it because as technology advances, their expectations are advancing? You know, which is all like and kind and fair. So it's one of those things where you can't, you can only focus on the positives of it, and you can only focus on there's still a plethora of opportunities, because it's still a model that's being figured out and it's evolving, so you have to evolve with it. Case in point with the show, you know, there were discussions of, do we lay it out on a weekly or do we drop it all at the same time? We dropped the first season all at the same time, which was great because this was something that people ate up. I believe within the first, I don't know, was it within the first 20 days we had over 40 million views? And within the first week we had over, I think it was like the first week was like over 1.8 billion minutes viewed. The next week was like 1.3 billion minutes viewed of the show. And it was a worldwide phenomenon. We were #1 in 115 countries. I ain't been to 115 countries, but I got people telling me, yo man, hey bro, you been to the Seychelles, cuz? They got your poster out there, cuz. You know, you been to Monaco? You out there, bro? I seen you on the post. You in Germany, bro? I didn't know you speak German. You know, Danke schön, cuz, Danke schön. But those are the things that you have to be aware of because, you know, Lauren, you made a point earlier about, you know, like when it comes to dealing with the global audience, who are you speaking to in France and how do you speak to them, right? And we're not speaking the same language, but they're interested in culture. They're not interested in an idea of a product. They're not interested in the biggest commercial. They're interested in culture. What does this American culture look like? What's this, oh, DC, well, oh, he's a, okay, that's what I want to learn, right? They want to learn the truth of that. So I think as far as staying a step ahead, it always starts at the nucleus of what consumers are consuming and why are they consuming it in certain ways.
Yeah.
You know, I can't dictate or determine the speed at which they will adapt, but I can determine, or at least I can follow the breadcrumbs of what resonates with them. And then once I know what that is, and then I figure out why it's important to them. I mean, obviously, Cross is a legacy book series. Like I said, over 30 books. People have grown up with this, and they're looking for the truth in it, but they're waiting for it. This is they're like, this is event TV. I've been looking for something. Okay, cool. Now, how do we put it out in a way that allows them to enjoy it at their pace, how they want it, dropping all 8 episodes at the same time for the first season at least, and seeing now how we gather the analytics. We don't have to worry about where the next wave of consumerism is going to go because we're taking the analytics right now based on what they did take and how they took it and why they took it, and that's going to help us build and shape how we speak to them again on the next season and the next season, because it starts a conversation. All we have to do is be cognizant enough to understand what they're saying so that we can lead their conversation in the right way that benefits everybody.
And then also be willing to go with them when they change their minds again.
You're right.
Which is the other part of it.
Because they're
right?
going to change their
Because they're going to change their minds. And that's the thing we talk about a lot too, that it's literally everything Aldous says. And then when there's been a sort of saturation of binging, and every now and then they want to be in a weekly cultural conversation, then you pivot to that and you're comfortable doing that. But it is all about following what it is that customers want and being responsive to it.
Right, and being malleable.
Always.
Flexible.
Yeah, exactly.
Always.
Well, listen, I know we are at time. Aldous, I also know that you're a watchmaker, so if you had your watch, I would also know you're at time.
Yes.
Strong
If I had,
flex.
yes, I know. I'm still in the manufacturer. I'm developing, but thank you. I've been
Strong
4 years on the game, but yes, I'm a timely
It's
man.
coming, it's coming.
coming.
So 3 takeaways that I had just for all of our brands and advertisers in the audience. One is that, timeless storytelling resonates if it's done right.
Right.
And if it's really hyper-local and it really speaks to the audience and makes them feel something. 2, you can kind of have the data and the authenticity go hand in hand. So really understanding consumer behavior, and that kind of like helps you understand how you want to treat your audience. And then 3, we all need to watch Cross on Prime Video if we haven't
That's
already.
it.
That's it.
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. Happy
Thank
CES,
you.
everyone.
Well, that was very interesting. It was about Amazon Prime Video. So I'll come back in about 5-10 minutes with another presentation. Thank you for joining. I'll be right back. Je reviens dans 5-10 minutes pour une autre présentation. Je reviens dans 5-10 minutes.